Okay.
We are back. Vintage Sports from the Old Garden. Nedick's at the Old Garden. I'm Ralph Tyko with the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, and one of our co-hosts is here today, Hal Bock. I don't know if Alan Blumkin has joined us yet.
I have.
Alan, are you here?
I think so.
Okay. We have a very special guest, former quarterback with the Green Bay Packers, and because we're all baseball nuts here, he told us that he grew up with Doc Ellis and asked us if we remembered, and boy, did we ever.
Yeah.
Where was it that you grew up?
Well, I went to junior high and high school with Doc. Played a lot of baseball with him. Used to catch him all the time, and I actually quit baseball my senior year in high school, and I think that was the same time that he signed with the Pirates out of high school. And yeah, I used to, we'd be on traveling teams all through Pony League and stuff, and yeah, I used to love Doc. Loved him. We grew up together. We're 2 days apart in age, and we're very close at one time. In fact, I even spent some time with him a few months before he passed away.
Yeah, tragically, very early in life. 50?
Liver cancer, I believe it was, because he destroyed his body with substance abuse and stuff over the years. And the latter part of his career and his years, he spent kind of giving back, and he was working with the penal code people out there in Southern California and Victorville and out there and outside of LA, helping inmates try to get their lives back on the right track and turn their life around. So he did everything he could.
Something positive to be said.
Right.
He made a claim that he never pitched a major league game totally sober.
Yeah. Doc had a tendency to exaggerate from time to time.
Okay.
So, and I still don't know if that story's true about him in San Diego. I'm not sure how much truth is in that one either. But that's water under the bridge now.
Yeah.
So.
Well,
I had a great interview with Doc.
Before I turn you over to Mr. Bock for some real questioning, I want to know when the split came, when you made a decision that baseball wasn't it, that you were going to go with football. I'm sure you were scouted if you were on traveling teams and what have you with Doc.
Did you
have a notion to sign? Did scouts talk to you?
Well, I didn't. Well, not really. The scouts. I didn't have any. I wasn't really pursued that much with baseball. I was good, but I didn't. My heart. My first love was football. And then when I was a junior in high school, out in L.A., I had a young kid come by, and he coached me a little bit in high school. And he started getting me to read defenses and stuff. And I'm going, I don't need to read defenses. I'm pretty good. I can throw the ball. I don't care. You cover, put three guys on that guy out there, and I'll still get it. I'll still complete it. But the young guy who was coaching me at that time was a young kid named Bobby Bethard. And Bobby told me when I was a junior in high school, Bobby told me I threw the ball. I was kind of a pure passer, and I threw the ball better than probably 85 or 90% of the college quarterbacks back then. So that kind of gave me a little boost.
Well, where did you go to college?
I started out at Washington State University, and I was up there for about a year and a half. They fired the coach up there, in my sophomore year. We go through spring ball. They brought in a coach that wanted to run the ball all the time. We had a big running back, a guy named Clancy Williams. Run like the wind. Ended up being the defensive cornerback for the Los Angeles Rams for years. And but all they wanted the quarterback to do, this guy, was just take the snap from the center and be a third pulling guard. I'd pitch it to Clancy, then the guards would pull and the quarterback would pull, and then So I went through spring ball and got tired of looking out of the ear hole of my helmet. And a couple of the coaches there, and there's a young guy, he was a running back for the Chargers at the time named Keith Lincoln. And Keith was spending some time up there in the off season, and he watched me in spring ball, and he says, you got some talent, kid. You gotta, you can throw the ball. You got to get out of here. You got to go to some, So that was the first time I heard the name Don Coryell, San Diego State. And so anyway, I transferred, went to junior college down in L.A., bumped back into Doc again because we took a couple classes. He was going to a junior college back there then, and we were had a great year. We were undefeated, number 2 in the country. Played with a guy named David Moses at the time. And I had rides all over the country, and I was going to go to Florida State for my last 2 years. And this young guy shows up one day and wanted me to get in the car with him and drive down to San Diego. Was a guy named Don Coryell. So,
passing genius.
Pardon me?
A passing genius offensive.
Oh God, he was just way ahead of his time, totally ahead of his time. And at that time, I committed. I was going to go to Florida State. I had rides all over the country, but I was going to go to Florida State. Steve Pinsey had just left. Blint McCoff had just left, but they had a pretty good passing game down there, and Coryell wouldn't take no for an answer. We used to call him, love him dearly. We used to call him the Daft because he had kind of a little hair lip type of a speech, and he'd say, that's way across the country. You don't want to go way across the country. Just come down to San Diego, And so he wouldn't take no for an answer, and so I got in the car with him the next day, drove down there to his little bitty office there at San Diego State, Division II school then, I guess. It was a small college. And, I had rides all over the country. And, anyway, I walked in his office, and there was a big kind of a fat, heavy-set guy standing in the corner who was our defensive coordinator that year, a guy named John Madden. And then there was another coach standing in the corner. It was an assistant coach at that time with the San Diego Chargers named Chuck Noll. And then there was a couple other coaches, a quarterback there that I was just following, a guy named Rod Dowhauer and a couple other coaches. And there was a young kid there that I ended up rooming with for a couple of months who was a graduate assistant coach, and his name was Joe Gibbs. And then there was a guy sitting at Coryell's desk that I recognized was Sid Gilman. And long story short, they put the full court press on me, and after a day or two down there, I called up Florida State and said, I'm not coming. I'm going to go to San Diego State. And
you had a who's who of coaches there.
Oh, it was great. I mean, I remember one day, I get talking, I won't shut up, guys, but I remember one day in spring ball, it's my senior year, and we go out in spring ball at San Diego State, and I can't hit a deep pass to save my life. I mean, I'm throwing deep passes, and I'm underthrowing them, overthrowing them, and this went on for 3 or 4 days. I couldn't, as Coach Lombardi would say, you couldn't hit a bull in the ass with a handful of peas, So anyway, I go out there one day, and they asked me to come out early with the wide receivers, and Sid Gilman's out there. Coach Coryell's got Sid Gilman out there. And you go, Sid, watch him. Watch him. So, Sid asked me to throw a few passes, and I threw 4 or 5 passes one side and 4 or 5 on the other, and couldn't hit, nobody. And finally he brought me back, and he said something to me. He says, what are you thinking about when you throw? And I said, I don't know. I'm just thinking about this. He says, well, I don't care what you're thinking about. He says, next time you throw it, just whatever you're thinking, that's fine. But just try to, at the last minute, just try whatever you're thinking. Just try to throw the ball 5 yards further up the field than what you normally would do, and then maybe 5 yards over their outside shoulder, a little further than what you normally think you might do. I said, okay, that's whatever. So I go up and I throw 4 or 5 or 6 passes on one side. Everyone's right there in the basket. Boom, boom, boom. I mean, the other side, same way. Everyone's right in the basket. Coryell jumps on, he jumps on Coach Gilman. Sid, thank you. Oh, I just Sid, thank you very much. I turned to Sid and I kind of mouthed, I said a big thank you. I couldn't believe it. Sid just kind of gave me a heads up and walked away. The guy was just a genius. Just a genius. You know, he watched me throw a few passes.
Had to have changed your career right there.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's funny. I mean, I had some great, you know, even our senior year, you know, Sid Gilman would come out and he scouted us a lot, and so would Al Davis, and you know, with the Raiders at the time. And Al told me my senior year we were, you know, number one team in the country, undefeated, small college. But he told me on more than one occasion our senior year that we had the best team on the West Coast, but we didn't have any depth at that time. Our first 22 or 23 players, we could stay with anybody in the country. And he even said we should be in the Rose Bowl. He says, trust me, I know what I'm talking about. I scout all these teams, SC, you know, Washington, Cal, you know, UCLA. He says, I scout them all the time. I know their talent, and you guys got the best team on the West Coast. But a lot of people said the worst thing that happened to my career professionally was going through that wide open West Coast offense with Coryell and that you know, the famous tree and the influence of Sid Gilman and everyone, to go to the frozen tundra and very predictable running game of Vince Lombardi, you know, and the Green Bay Packers. But I wouldn't trade it for the world now. I caught the tail end of that great era up in Green Bay, and great bunch of guys. You know, I'm going back in a few weeks. We got a big reunion back in Green Bay, and looking forward to it. And
cool.
it was just a great time in my life. You know, going back to Wisconsin.
You didn't mention Bill Walsh in that coaching West Coast coaching array. I know he was a big friend of Gilman's, and I wonder if you interacted with him back in the day.
I never had an opportunity to interact with Bill, but you're definitely right. He's one of the great ones on the West Coast offense, and you know, I mean, you know, Coach Coryell had a great coaching, coaches branch off in his coaching, influence and tree as well. But you know, Sid Gilman had probably one of the greatest. You know, because Sid touched so many people with his passing philosophy and stuff, and you know, and Walsh was definitely one of them. Just definitely one of them, which he proved time and time again out there, in you know, in San Francisco and those great teams he had in the '80s.
Hey Don, I'm curious about one thing. When you were drafted by the Packers and you arrived as a rookie, were you intimidated by Lombardi?
Everybody was intimidated by Lombardi. I tell people, you haven't lived till you got your fanny chewed out by Coach Lombardi. Yeah, he'd walk into a room, man, and you know, I spent almost 6 years in the Army Reserves, and it's, you know, it's like, you know, when you have a general or colonel walk into a room, boy, you just lock those heels, man. And you know, the old cliche, when Coach Lombardi said jump, you didn't question, you just said how high, if you said anything. Yeah, everybody was intimidated by Coach Lombardi. You know, even the veterans, and about the only guys that really weren't. Well, a couple of guys could get away with some stuff. One of them was the great Max McGee, and then, you know, Fuzzy Thurston had a little knack about it too. You know, Fuzzy could say things kind of to maybe catch him off guard or something. But all in all, man, yeah, Vince was very, very businesslike, and he was at that time he was. You know, all these motivational people, especially at that time, it's say, you know, if you're going to motivate somebody, you know, you motivate them in front of your peers, and then, you know, if you got any criticism, you know, you take them over in private and give them, you know, criticize them or constructive criticism. Vince was totally the opposite. He'd take you in private and build you up, tell you how good you'd be, how great you'd be. You wouldn't be there unless you had that ability or faith in you. And then he had 10 minutes later, take you out in front of, you know, the teammates, all your peers, and 2,000 or 3,000 people watching practice, and just totally undress you, just totally embarrass you. I mean, he did it, you know, rookies, veterans, whatever. I remember one time we're watching a game film, and I'm a rookie, and we're watching the game film, and he starts running these 16-millimeter plays back, and he says, "Kramer, is that you? Look at that. Jerry, that's pathetic." And Jerry says, "Yeah, you know." Jerry says, "That's pathetic. Look at that. So help me, I've seen stray dogs wander on the practice field that are better guards you'll ever be in your life." And I'm saying under my breath, holy smokes, this guy's all pro. And he's talking to him that way? Man, but that's the way he was. He never let you settle on your laurels. He would always push you to do better. No matter how good you thought you could do or how well you did, he would always make you think or push you to even do better. Always pushing the envelope, raising the bar.
Would he criticize your mental mistakes or your physical mistakes more?
Both. That's a good question. Mental is, for him, it was more of a mental. I mean, physical definitely, because we'd run certain plays, run them. But mental, he wanted the mental toughness, and he just wanted you, mentally, prepared. Pretty much equal, I guess. I never really thought of it that way. That's a good question, but he was tough both ways.
Okay.
Especially in quarterbacks. My rookie year, I was up there with Zeke Butkowski. I was like the third string guy, and we had meetings before meetings and during meetings, and of course meetings after meetings. We called our own plays, and no matter what quarterbacks, if Bart was in the game, Zeke and I'd be standing on the sidelines, and probably 3 out of 5 times we would call the same play that Bart called. Because that's how attuned we were as far as game plans every week, with Coach Lombardi.
Right.
Yeah. And
was there a jealousy among the quarterbacks, or is there generally
no,
catchers? How does that work?
No, we they're all professionals. We knew our place. Bart's a legend. I mean, there's nobody better than Bart in my book. His attention to detail and the way he prepared for a game, his study habits and his work ethic was surpassed by none. And Zeke Butkowski, they nicknamed Super Sub, great guy. Right. They're all great, whatever. And in fact, I tell you
did they have any trouble passing on their knowledge to you as a rookie, knowing that maybe someday?
They didn't have any worry for me. I know a couple of years later, in 1969, Bart was hurt, and I played quite a few games. I think I started 5, won 4. I set some individual passing records and team records and stuff, and I thought I was pretty good. And so I go into the coach. Vince had already left. He went down to Washington, D.C., and he actually kind of contacted me through a third party. Free agency was a little different back then. They didn't really have it. And he wanted me to play my option out.
That was different.
Yeah. He wanted me to play my option out in maybe 1970 and then come down back up sunny in Washington. So, I had a pretty good year, and I'm a young, cocky kid, and Bart was hurt. And so I go to the coach, and I said, Phil Bankston at the time, Vince had left, and I said, Coach, a lot of the players and some of the coaches think I should maybe be playing a little bit more. And he says, Don, as long as I'm head coach here at the Green Bay Packers, he said, Bart's a legend. He's the man. He's going to be the man. He's going to start, whatever. I said, I understand that totally. So I said, Bart, let's go have a beer. And Bart and I go out, and I said, Bart, just between you and me, I said, how many more years do you want to play? He says, at least 3, maybe 5 more. And I'm going, oh my gosh, so I kind of made up my mind to, kind of play my option out and maybe jump down to play with the Vince. And then, of course, the next year, 1970, he passes away, and then that deal fell through and whatever. But, it's funny how difficult, but that's the only thing, I was pushing Bart a little bit, but, Bart's Bart. No one, Bart Star is Bart Star.
Right.
Just a great guy. And
before I turn you over to Hal, I've said this before, I want to ask you about Grabowski and Anderson. They replaced Paul Hornung.
And Jimmy, yeah.
and Jimmy Taylor was a great blocking back. Was there much? There had to be a lot of fall off between, as highly touted as those two were. They weren't Horning and Taylor.
Yeah, they weren't, but they were. Grabo was. I tell you, I mean, he was so quick out of that 3-point stance. I mean, it was difficult for me to get the ball to him sometimes. Just he was that quick. And Grabo would have been. I don't know. I mean, he could have been one heck of a fullback. But like things happen to people, he got a couple of bad knee operations, and that slowed him up considerably and whatever. And Donnie was good. Donnie was better than most people give him credit for. He was a very integral part of winning that second Super Bowl my rookie year. Donnie, he didn't play hardly at all in the first Super Bowl. But the second one, he was a very integral part. But yeah, they were both, I think, real good players, extremely good players. But they certainly weren't the legends that Paul and Jim were. And they came in the year of I believe it was the year when they had the expansion draft, and both Paul and Jim went down to New Orleans, if I recall.
Did you have the AFL knocking at your door at any time?
I got caught up in the first combined draft. And so, I got drafted. That was when they first agreed not to fight each other. And so I didn't get the big bucks. Grabo and Anderson and all those guys got the big bucks the year before, and then the first year of the merger, the first draft was 67, and that was my rookie year. So we didn't get the big bucks. In fact, I was the first round draft choice, and my salary was $15,000.
Whoa! Oh,
but back then, I'm saying, my gosh, they're going to pay me over $1,000 a month to play football. This is heaven. I remember talking to my good friend Jack Kemp years ago, and we were talking about the same issue 25 years ago, and he was saying, now these guys make $15,000 right now, maybe just tying their shoelaces before a game. Just amazing how much these guys make today. It's just amazing.
You were talking about injuries. I could almost read Hal Bock's mind, because over the past few months, we've been talking about the extensive head injuries that have been not discovered, but the effects of them, and how players have gone through their life in pain and disoriented. You were lucky. You never really you were never concussed, I'm assuming.
Well, no, I had over my career, I had probably like 4 concussions in the pros. And of course, you have a couple in college and stuff. But you're right. I've had a lot of teammates over the years that I've had numerous, severe concussions, and I'm like everybody else. We're part of that class action lawsuit, but we're not going to see anything. And I was talking to another former pretty good player last month. He lives out here in Colorado. He's 78 years old. He played 14 years in the league, and he said, number one, you don't want to qualify for anything with that CTE, because if you do, that means you got some degree of dementia or early stages of Alzheimer's or some other CTE type of a thing that that's going to affect your longevity in your life. So, number one, when you go through these battery of tests to see, what degree, if you have anything, then they pay out supposedly accordingly if you do qualify. But he said if he even qualifies for the minimum that they have on the scale, like a 1.5, goes I think 1 up to 4, but you got to have a 1.5 to even qualify for early stages of whatever. He says the most he'll ever get out of that settlement with the NFL is maybe $36,000.
Wow.
And all you hear about is, the billion dollar, the $1 billion amount that the NFL is going to give all these players. But it's like anything else. The NFL, they say it's there, but to qualify and get some of that money, I know a lot of guys that really need it badly. It's just you get the NFL. So there's so many hoops and the bureaucracy and stuff you got to go through to try to qualify to get this money for this guy. I got another friend of mine. We were rookies together, and I'll say to him, when you get off work tonight, let's just say a name. Let's just say Chip. I'll say, Chip, when you get off work tonight, come over here. We're having a meeting at this location. We're putting together a golf tournament for some charities for the kids, etc. I need to put together a volunteer committee and stuff. He says, okay, I'll be there. He'll never show. The next day I'll call him up and I'll say, hey, Chip, you didn't meet the meeting last night. What happened? He'll say, Don, I left work and I knew I had to go somewhere, and I drove around. I kind of got lost. I couldn't figure out where I had to go, and I finally found my way home, and I just went home. And he has applied for benefits from the league. He's cleaned up so bad. He's applied 2 different occasions from the NFL for support to get help with his concussions and stuff, and he's turned down. He's been turned down twice. So it's frustrating with the league why they don't take care of it.
With all the money that changes hands nowadays, with all the advertising, all the television, they're worldwide. They can't give back to those who basically whose shoulders these guys are standing on today.
Yeah,
to be where they are.
Somebody said, well, maybe the current players might want to chip in. Well, that's not going to happen. These guys are, But you're right. If the league, the owners, or whatever would just take care of some of these old timers that really, there's guys that really they're dire need. They need the help. They need medical help, and the average salary back when I played was like $23,000, and that was average. And a lot of guys didn't even make that. I didn't make $23,000 until my 4th year in the league, and
that's astounding.
And there's guys here with the Broncos that I know that these guys make more in one game. Some of them in one half of one game that I made in 9 years. It's just amazing.
I'm curious about one thing. When you played, were guys concerned about head injuries and getting, the cumulative effect of being hit in the head? Would you guys think about that at all?
We really weren't. It was, you just didn't know any better. The guys would come off the field, you get dinged a little bit, and then a little smelling salt, and then they'd ask you, what your name was, what day is it? It's probably Sunday. That's when most of the games were, and they give you a little smelling salt, and then sometimes they give you a yellow salt pill and a red salt pill and say, take these pills and get back in there. And you go, God, they're just salt pills, what are they? They're just salt pills. Don't worry about it, and then just to get you back in the game. And they didn't care what happened to you 10, 20, 30 years later. Of course, then, no, we didn't either. We didn't know the severe effects of what, and the equipment we had was just amazing. Nothing like they have today. The equipment we had was, it was terrible compared to today's standards. But
right.
Yeah, we really weren't aware of
it.
And most of us were, you didn't really think about that kind of thing back then. It wasn't a high priority.
Wayne Walker, the ex-great linebacker and
right.
terrific broadcaster out on the West Coast out here, recently passed away from all of that, the head injuries and the dementia. And they had an interview with him shortly before he passed, and he said that it was his downfall. What were these injuries? But they asked him, would you do it all again? And he said, absolutely.
Yeah.
It didn't waver. It was so, his response was so from the heart and so quick that he just didn't, absolutely, he says. So part of it is the ego of the player that is hurt and refuses to give in because your body is everything, and you want to get back in there, I'm sure, as quickly as possible.
Well, yeah, you want to get back in there because you're also concerned about, I was just with a guy today, and he says, he played hurt all the time, and you want to get back in there because if you don't, somebody else is going to take your job. And so, you have pride and whatever. Yeah, Wayne Walker, I played against Wayne, and, of course, he and Jerry Kramer were very close. Jerry Kramer's a good friend, and he actually sits on our advisory board with the company I'm with out here in Colorado, and I know Jerry, that really bothered him a lot because, they were college roommates and rookies the same year and stuff. And, he had a lot of admiration. He was a great player, Wayne was.
Yeah, Wayne played back on that Detroit Lion team with Alex Harris and Schmidt. I think if he didn't play with Schmidt, he would have gotten a lot more credit as a linebacker. But Schmidt was absolutely the best. Talk about your Sam Huffs and all that. I think Schmidt was as good as any.
Yeah, Joe was as good as anybody back then. Yeah.
I'd like to share a little anecdote with you guys.
Please.
It happened here in New York a day or so ago. The Jets, who are going to be a terrible team this year, decided to have a fan forum. So they invited a couple of players and the commissioner and a bunch of fans to just shoot the breeze and talk about football. And, of course, the subject of head injuries and the recent finding by the New England Journal of Medicine came up. And the Jets' number one draft choice, a kid named Adams, I think Jamal Adams maybe. He's 21 years old. And he talked about the safety issues in football. And he made a comment that just shook everybody up. He said, if I could choose a place to die, it would be on the football field. And the fans cheered. And I'm thinking, my God, well, what have we come to here?
Yeah.
And, I know about passion for the game, but life and death is kind of finality to that,
Yeah. That's, it's society today, and what's, I don't know, it's just, sometimes it's a throwback to the old gladiator days. You think we're back in the Roman Empire.
Exactly.
Yep.
It's exactly what it is.
Yep.
Al, share a report that you read a week or so ago about injuries, about head injuries and football players.
Well, the New England Journal of Medicine printed a study of 110 football players, brains of deceased football players, and all but one showed evidence of CTE. So the logical conclusion is football is a dangerous game. Now, there's another way of viewing this report because the brains were donated by survivors of these players, and probably in all those cases, they demonstrated while they were alive the effects of brain injury and dementia and Alzheimer's and so forth. So I'm not sure the study is completely legitimate, but it is disturbing to think that in 110 players, 109 showed the effects of football, CTE, on their brain. And that's just, to me, is very scary, and I just don't know what it's going to lead to in football. We've talked about this a couple of times, and it's frightening,
It really is,
Where do you see the game going along those lines? Do you see it like we think it's going to be?
The league is taking a lot of
sort of an elaborate flag football game.
Yeah.
Someday.
And they're trying to protect the quarterback more, et cetera. They're trying to not delegitimize the game, but to make it somewhat safer, so to speak. But I'm like you. They got to watch out. They don't want to kill kill the goose. That lays the golden egg. It's a violent game. It always has been. And the thing is, these kids are so strong and big today. They pay these guys $100,000 sometimes just to work out in the off season. It's a total different game today, and it's $1 billion. It's a $1 billion sport, and the NFL is so powerful. I think the NFL in many ways is as powerful, and maybe some ways more powerful than the United States, Congress is, and the fans. I still think, I don't know. I hope they don't ruin the game. I don't think they will, but. I've been wrong before, but it's still
when they
football's
changed the rules protecting the quarterback. Were the old guys in the league a little bitter at that?
Yeah, you bet. I mean, I would love to play today in today's rules. How they protect the quarterback, and the shotgun and the pistol, and it's a faster game. They're calling the plays in, radioing the plays in and stuff, taking a lot of the burden off of some of the skill sets and the study and the, your work ethic and stuff you have to do to prepare for a game. I'd love to play today in a wide open type of an offense and whatever, and how they protect the quarterback. It's a different game. It's a different era. It's a totally different
Don,
era.
one final question from me. I just want to ask you that when fans, reporters, me, Hal, talk to you and say things like, boy, it's a violent game and stuff, do you deep down in your subconscious or whatever, do you think to yourself, you're damn right it's a violent game, and I was one of them that played it, and I'm proud of it?
I totally concur. Mike Ditka's a good friend, and Mike has the contrary opinion on that, I guess. But I think if you ask 9 out of 10 guys that played the game, back then, they'll still say, yeah, I'd do it all over in a heartbeat. People ask me that question fairly often. Would you do it over again? I said certainly, but there's 3 or 4, maybe 8 or 10 passes I'd like to have back. I might change those, but outside of those 8 or 10 passes, I'd do it all over again in a heartbeat. And Jimmy Taylor once told me, he said, he gets asked this question a lot too. He says, what's the difference of the game today than when you guys played back in the 60s? And, Jim Taylor would say, well, 2 things. Back then, we didn't run out of bounds like you do today. And the second thing is we all had to have an off-season job. Most everybody had an off-season job back when I played. So,
what were you trained for if it wasn't going to be football? What would have been your life passion?
I wanted to be a teacher. And then, that's the furthest thing that I'm in sales and marketing and real estate.
That's teaching. I was in sales and marketing for a long time. It's very close to being a teacher. Coaching is the same way. It's just getting over ideas and convincing.
Yeah. It's all communication, yeah.
Did you consider going into coaching when your career was over?
Yeah, I did, but I don't know if I'd have the temperament for it. I thought about it, but I didn't. I figured, well, if you go into coaching, you're here, you're going to be traveling all over all the time, all over the country. You get hired, you get fired, you get fired, you get hired and stuff, going all over the country. So I decided not to go that route. And ended up in a real estate business for many, many years. I was working for developers, upscale golf course communities and developers around the country. And same scenario I found out. If you don't do your job, you're out of a job. If you can't sell, you're out of a job. And then eventually, if you're working in a private area, in a resort or a private community, you sell yourself out of product. You're successful, you sell yourself out of a product, and you got to move on to the next one. So anyway,
Right.
I ended up traveling more than I thought I would anyway. So.
Okay. Hal.
Yeah.
Hal.
Yeah. I'm here.
Oh, okay. Just anything you want to ask Don.
Yeah, I'd like to ask him what it was like.
Al Blumkin. Al Blumkin, a little late.
I've been fascinated by what has been going on with this. Absolutely fascinated by it. And I just want to ask Don what it was like preparing for the Super Bowl.
Coach Lombardi, he we would be watching films of the Raiders, and I would sneak into a defensive meeting, and because I wanted to learn as much as I could, so I'd sneak into meetings, and our offensive meetings were the same way. But Vince he did not want to be the first coach to lose, an NFL team to lose to an AFL team. He was so concerned about that. But I remember we're down in Fort Lauderdale preparing for Super Bowl II, and we'd have meetings all the time. And he'd be running a 16 millimeter film of the Raiders, and so often he would say, he'd start laughing. He'd say, and then he'd say, Coach, and they'd say, "What are you laughing at, Coach?" And he'd say, "Well, gosh," he says, "look at that." He says, "The Raiders, they're a good football team, but they're doing things that they're obsolete. They're doing things that are obsolete in the NFL 5 or 6 years ago. Look at that. That's obsolete. We did that years ago, and it's just, you just can't get away with that now." But he would reinforce in our minds, no matter what they did, no matter how good they were, on paper and their ability as a player, as a team, that their whole approach to the game could not stand up to the great National Football League, our reputation. I mean, he just put it in our mind that there was no way, nothing they could do, offensively or defensively, that they could do that could beat us.
Okay, one other thing. If you were there in '67, you were there for the Ice Bowl.
Yeah, I was there for the Ice Bowl.
What was that like? That must have been brutal.
It was so cold. We had it warmed up. We didn't have the equipment. We had guys wearing, they would put a pair of socks on, put a plastic bag over their sock, and then put another sock on, and then tape it up, and 2 or 3 pairs of long underwear and sweatshirts and stuff. And this first time I ever saw this, any exposed part, and they wear a ski mask and stuff and gloves, but any exposed part of their neck and around their ears and on their face, around their eyes, a lot of the guys put Vaseline on just to keep the temperature inside, their skins warm as they possibly could. We had heaters on the sidelines. We had makeshift tarps. We made a little tent over the bench, and we had young kids standing by the heaters to make sure no players could get close enough to them, because you had no feeling. They had to guard against burning. And then the heaters would blow onto the bench, into our little makeshift tent area and our little cover, and people would take temperatures on that bench from time to time, and it was 0 degrees. So they were coming off the field trying to get warm in 0 degree temperatures. Imagine that.
Wow. So going from Green Bay and that under those conditions to Florida must have been the Super Bowl must have been like almost a trip to paradise.
Oh yeah, I remember we got on the plane in Green Bay, and I think it was 6 degrees, and we got on the plane that morning, and we got off the plane at Fort Lauderdale, and it was 86 degrees.
Wow.
80 degree difference. Yeah. That was great time. Great time.
This has been absolutely fascinating.
And you guys are on the West Coast. Are you? Whereabouts on the West Coast are you?
Well, I'm on the West Coast. Hal Bock and Alan Blumkin are on the East Coast. So
East Coast. Okay.
This is all done over the computer, and we get the benefit of both worlds. I grew up in New York, so
yeah, we used to, we every time, I mean, with Coach, Coach Lombardi loved New York. We'd fly to Chicago or L.A. The plane would come up, it'd come at the tarmac, they'd drop these steps. We'd come down the steps, get on a bus, and we might have one or two motorcycle police escorts to whatever hotel we're staying at. We go home to play the Giants here at Old Yankee Stadium. That plane pulls right up to the front gate there at LaGuardia, and John Lindsay's there as the mayor. They got a big band there. Vince is coming home. He parades us right through the airport, right out curbside. We get on the bus. It's all, you have fire engines are out there, and making all kinds of noise, and all these big escorts right down the Waldorf Astoria. Vince Lombardi was coming home, man. He was bringing his Packers back to New York. He loved going back to New York.
I just want to mention one more thing. On Facebook, I'm one of my Facebook friends is Daniel Kramer, Jerry's son, and I signed petitions to get Jerry into Canton. I think it's really criminal that he's not in there.
I mean, most people think he is. That's the ironic thing about it. I mean, everybody's pushing to get him in there. I'm good friends with, with Dan and Alicia and, Jerry. Of course, I talk to Jerry all the time. And, but, it's funny. Most people, what do you mean he's not? Well, yes, he is. I said, no, he's not. Yes, he is. It's just a damn crying shame. And I got to say the same thing while we're talking about this. My old coach, Don Coryell, only coach that's ever won 100 games in the collegiate level and 100 games at the professional level. He never won the big one, but what he brought to the game, I think he should be in the Hall of Fame too. But that's just a horse of another color. So,
very good point.
Yeah, but everybody. I mean, so many people think, yes, he is. Jerry Kramer's in the Hall of Fame. No, he's not. He should be. And it's a shame. It's a crime why he's not.
Yeah, that's nonsense.
How does that? How do you appeal? Is there a veterans committee that you can?
Well, there's a veterans committee. I think there's 8 or 9 guys on there. If you go, if you Google, in fact, there's a good sports writer that's been pushing this for years. A guy named Bob Fox down in Florida, and he also goes back to Wisconsin. And he's behind a big push to try to get some of these sports writers to consider, Jerry and whatever. And he knows a lot of these guys. And he's been pushing like heck to try to get them, in there, as much as he can. But there's like 9 guys that vote on this. And if you go on one of the websites, they list everybody that's on the committees, and then they have the 9. They have the 9 people that vote for the, the senior, or the whatever it is, the one at large, the senior candidate that's overlooked or whatever. So, but
one other question.
I guess
can you tell me a Herb Adderley story, because I thought he was just the backbone of that defense.
Oh yeah, Herb was great. And I guess he's still in Philadelphia. He's still kicking around. Old number 26.
Yeah.
I mean, just about Herb was great, and the only wide receiver I ever saw give Herb any trouble, if you was the great Paul Warfield. Herb had a lot of respect for Paul. That was the one person I think that Herb had the most problems with as far as covering one-on-one. But just, I mean, those guys are great. Herb Adderley, Willie Wood, Ray Nitschke, Dave Robinson, Leroy Caffey, the great Henry Jordan passed. I mean, those guys are just a great bunch of guys, I tell you. And so many of them are Willie Davis, so many of them are in the Hall of Fame, and more should be. They were that good. And they're not only good on the field, they were good off the field. They were just good people, good guys of good character, and that's what Vince insisted upon.
Don, what I like most about this interview is that when we talked about salary, we acknowledged that, I think you said that some of these players make more in a half than you made in 9 years. But when you said it, you didn't say it with rancor or bitterness or anything like that. The money, I didn't catch that in your voice in any way. You literally were right in the middle, timing-wise. It could have gone the other way financially, but it doesn't seem to bother you. I mean,
no.
Nothing you can do about it. But
well, let's put it this way. I mean, I remember when Coach Lombardi got everybody in that room and he made the final cut. Coach Lombardi, he gets up and he says, "Gentlemen, there's 3 reasons why you're in this room. There's 3 reasons." And we're down to 40-some players now. We're getting ready for the first game. And he says, "There's 3 reasons. Number 1, it's the little boy in you. You're playing this great game of football because you love it. You think you're just a little boy. You've always played it all your life, and you just love this game, and you're going to play it as long as you can. That's just a little boy in you. And the second reason is your pride. You have pride. You want to play this game. You want to be the best you can be. You don't only want to play it. You want to be the best at whatever." And he said the third reason, and it's a sorry reason, and I know there's probably 2 or 3 in here playing for this reason only, is for the money. And that's a pathetic reason to be playing this game if you're just playing for the money, he said. So, but I never looked at it. I mean, I'm saying, my God, they're going to pay me over $1,000 a month to play football. This is heaven. I mean, whatever. But, I never looked at it what it could have been, should have been, or whatever. I remember years ago I was playing golf with the great Tony Canadale, and a guy named Tom Miller was the assistant GM when I signed my contract. And we're playing down at Desert Mountain in Arizona. This was 30 years ago. And I had like a 4-foot putt to make. And we're talking salaries like we're doing now. And Tom Miller said, "Yeah," he said, "Don," he says, "if I was negotiating with you today, salary-wise, I'd probably start out in the low 7 figures." And I turned to him and I dropped my putter and I said, "You son of a..."
Where were you when I needed you that?
Yeah, where were you? But who knows, But like I said, I caught the tail end of that great era up there, and playing for Vince Lombardi for a couple of years, and just having the privilege of playing with some of these guys, and Jerry Kramer and Fuzzy Thurston, Max McGee, and these guys. I mean, money can't buy some of that stuff. So what the heck,
Nice, great career. Either of you guys want to say anything or ask anything of Don?
I just want to say thank you very much. This has been absolutely fascinating.
Well, thank you.
I've been following pro football since the early 50s. And
you go way back.
On a historical perspective,
in fact,
it is fascinating.
A good friend of mine, the great, they loved him out here, the great Vito Bay Pirelli just passed away.
I know that,
yes. And, we were sad. We mentioned
went to his,
show.
just a great guy. You talk about stories. I mean, oh my gosh. I mean, he and Bobby Lane probably had the best stories, but who knows?
Bobby Lane, high ball thrower, low ball thrower, high ball drinker, or something like that.
High ball, yes.
Now, he was playing for the Steelers.
Bobby Lane had a lot in common with Kenny Stabler.
The Snake. Yep.
Bobby Lane was.
And if I'm not mistaken, there's another guy who definitely should be in the Hall. Is Kenny Stabler, if he hasn't been in.
Yeah, Kenny was inducted last year.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, he was inducted last year. Yeah, Kenny was, yeah.
I have no excuse. I haven't been concussed, and I still don't know. So,
well, you guys are all baseball, but you're baseball fanatics. That's good.
We're all sports fanatics, but our first love is really baseball.
Baseball, football, and basketball. Those are the by 3.
Yeah. Hal and I have a lot of hockey memories too. Hal worked for the New York Rangers for a while after college.
Okay.
So, anything you want to ask Don Horn, Hal Bock?
I just want to thank him. I agree with Alan. It's been a fascinating interview. Fascinating to go over those great players and those great names of the past from the Green Bay history And it's nice to see the Packers competing again and being right up near the top again.
Yeah,
yes, it is.
Like I said, what is it? Aaron said last year they're going to run the table. Well, he ran the table, but he scratched on the 8 ball.
Yeah, that's right.
So anyway,
well, I think if I'm not mistaken, the expression was coined in your era. The Pack is back.
The Pack is back.
Correct?
Yep. The Pack is back. Yep.
And it always will be in our hearts. So, hey, thank you guys, all of you. Appreciate it. Don, I hope you'll come back and spread your joy here a little bit more in the future.
Sure. Just, more than happy to, guys. Appreciate it. Enjoyed it. Be well, everybody, okay?
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. We will be back next week. Al and Hal and I. George Case probably won't be here next week. George Case is not a hockey fan. We have a hockey show next week. And I'll tell you more about it during the week. Look forward to it. And, again, thank you, Don Horn, former Green Bay Packer.
Good night.
Good night, gentlemen.
Good night.